Where was that? Hercules?
Hercules, yeah. Yeah. That's an inter-service event. Me, Les Wilmot, Ryan Robinson, Alan Ashmore. I don't know who that is. Anyway, bollocks, I won it.
I first met Bernard in 1989. That's me at the front with the sunbright top on. Bernard standing in his orange cagoule. He was just a nice guy, older than the rest of us. And I was the young hotshot, just fresh out of riding for Great Britain, just enjoying out of season mountain biking with friends. And there's Bernard listening to my stories of local and national races, laughing along, not saying much, but always funny. Little was I to know that this great man had not only ridden the Tour de France, the Milan-San Remo, featured on the front page of L'Equipe for his exploits, a humble and wonderful man. I got to sit down and talk to him at the age of 96, probably the world's oldest Tour de France rider. I started by asking him how he first got into cycling.
Well, I suppose when I was a young schoolboy, when I learned to ride a bike.
Where were you living at the time?
Tadworth in Surrey. It's about halfway between Epsom and Redhill.
Yeah. And did you start with a cycling club?
I first joined the Belle Vue because George Fleming, who was a bit of a star at the time, he was a member. I worked in South London, so I used to go and have sausage and chips and then go along to the club room. But at the time, I lived about 15 or 16 miles from where I worked in South London. I worked near Lambeth Bridge. And I wasn't going to get paid very much because I was only just left school, I was 16, I suppose. So I used to ride my bike each way. Now, I got loads of miles in there, you can imagine. Just going backwards and forwards to work was 35 miles, say, day after day after day. That got me sort of used to riding a bike. I know I was in a cycling club when the London Olympics were on in 1948. I was 18. So I watched some of that, but very disappointed when Reg Harris didn't win the tandem sprint.
And were you there? You went to watch it?
Oh, yeah, I was there at Hercules watching it in 48.
And did you see the road race at
all? I didn't see that. No, that was in Windsor Park. So, no, I didn't see that at all.
Were you racing at the time? So were you racing in 1948? Can you remember?
I rode at Club 25. Wasn't very impressive. It was about 112, I think.
So when did you start racing properly? How old were you, do you think, when you started to really start to get results?
Well, they didn't have open road racing in then, but it used to be around aerodrome perimeters and things like that. Leon Solent, that was one.
What was road racing like? Because there wasn't a British Cycling Federation, was there?
All the mass starters, it was called, would be on motor racing circuits or Goodwood. That's a motor racing circuit. Well, I had my first win there. I think it was the Southern champion. There was one at Coventry. I forget what the circuit was called, but it was, again, it would be round an old aerodrome, something like that. The very first open road race was from London to somewhere in the Midlands, and that was won by Maitland. I preferred the road racing. Yeah. In those days, there'd be a big bunch going round.
Yeah.
And probably only about 2 or 3 of them doing any racing. The rest of them were all just sitting on. I could go on the flat.
Yeah.
But I preferred the sprint finish.
One of Bernard's first experiences of racing internationally was the 1952 Route de France, a brutal fortnight of 1,270 miles across broken cobbles and rough country roads. From the opening stage, Bernard was prominent in the attacks before a broken chain dropped him back, though he fought his way through to rejoin the main group of 100 riders.
Oh, that would be the Route de France, which is like an amateur Tour de France. I think that was in 1952. It started from Caen in Normandy, and I think it must have lasted for 2 weeks. It was quite a long time. And there was an army team, so-called. There was Brian Robinson, Les Wilmot, me, Alan Ashmore, Dick Henley from Plymouth, and George Fleming was the manager. And we were called the Western Command. I think I set off with too much enthusiasm, and after about 3 days I was absolutely knackered. No, I was all to get in and have a go. But, well, I finished the Route de France.
Yeah.
And just the 4 of us finished, I think. There's probably been 2 teams of 4 started. The British team and the Army team. It was all, we were all together, really. I think they were more inclined to race. I mean, at home, if you were known, which by then I suppose I was, nobody would work with you. You could be on the front, you could ride yourself into the bloody ground. They wouldn't come and do a bit at the front at all. I remember in the national championship about that time, probably about 54, I was so very disgusted with them. After about 3 laps of this, wherever this circuit was, I just got off and packed it in. It was pointless trying to race,
1954 would prove to be Bernard's finest year as an amateur. In the spring, he travelled to Ireland for the 7-stage Tour of Ireland, winning the opening stage and holding the race lead all the way to Dublin to take the overall victory. Later that summer came the British Empire and Commonwealth Games in Vancouver, where Bernard took bronze in the road race and came within a whisker of the second medal on the track, finishing 4th in the 4,000 metre pursuit. He would also ride the World Championships.
I was in, I think it was would have been the 1954 World Championships. Louis and Bobby won it, Frenchman.
Yeah.
At Solingen in Germany.
It's the famous Klingen cycle track at Solingen, Germany, and 72 professional aces are off to decide who among their number shall be world champion. The course is 16 laps, making a total distance of 240 kilometers. It's a grueling business, not made any easier by rain on the track, but 100,000 fans are there to urge them on.
A bit of a disaster that was, I think. Well, it was pouring down with rain. I'd got one of these plastic jackets on, and I wasn't going very well. I do know that. Ray Booty was, he did a blinding ride. But the trouble is he fell off, so his blinding ride was chasing the others for the rest of the day. Right up till recent years, until he died. I used to see Ray regularly because he only lived on the edge of Derby.
1955 was the big year. Bernard turned professional with the Hercules Cycle Company of Birmingham, joining the first British trade team to take on the continent. From their training base at Les Isambres on the Côte d'Azur, the orange jerseyed Hercules riders threw themselves into the early season classics. In March at the Grand Prix de Monaco in Marseille, Bernard made a long solo chase to bridge up to the leading Spanish rider, a ride so audacious that L'Equipe ran the story across 5 columns. Outnumbered in the sprint, he was beaten into third. It was the performance that put British cycling on the continental map. I asked Bernard about riding his first Tour de France.
It was pretty grueling. And of course, it was first seeing some of the bigger mountains. In fact, when the tour's on now, I've got a big French atlas, and I go looking at where the route is, stuff like that, and then I see these names that I remember from the Route de France, going through the Pyrenees, Bagnères de Luchon. Mind the Tour de France, the first day, it started off on the French coast, the north, whether it was Le Havre or somewhere like that. But it finished the last part of the Paris-Roubaix. So we did the hell of the north, so-called, and finished on the track at Roubaix. Yeah. Well, we're just riding along, going a fair old pace, of course. Nobody hanging around there. Well, there'd be various French and Italian teams battling there, I suppose. But you know what the tour's like. There's the big group in front, then all the support cars behind. And one of our team, Fred Krebs, got a puncture. Well, I was near enough Fred to see, so I stopped while he got a change of wheel from our team car. And the captain, the manager was Sid Cousins, pre-war sprinter. But he spoke French, and he knew quite a lot about bike racing. So Fred got his puncture, had a wheel change, and I'd waited with him, and we worked our way back to the group of following cars. But before we'd actually got to our car, I got a puncture. By now we're on the hell of the north, all the pavé, big lumps here, or big holes where it should have been lumps. I said to Fred, well, you might as well go on now, Fred, because we've only got about 25, 30 miles to go. We wouldn't have got back on, I suppose. I hadn't caught our team car up by then, or neither of us had. I got a puncture, so I couldn't get a spare wheel. I had to stop and change the tyre, blow that up and set off again. Well, buck me, I think that got a puncture as well. The net result was that I lost so much time, I finished outside the time limit. So I'd only been in it 2 days, and that was the end of my Tour de France. Sid Cousins got me fixed up with, I think he was the local butcher somewhere in northern France. Good family. And so I stayed with him while the tour was on. And got a start in several local races, and I didn't win any of them, but I picked up a bit of money. Not enough to get rich on, but more than they won in the tour. I don't know whether the butcher, because he was a keen follower of bike racing. So I think he probably took me to Paris. He wanted to go anyway, to see the finish. So I met up with, well, there was only Brian Robinson and Tony Hoare left.
Did you want to ride the Tour again, or did you feel that?
No, I sort of. I thought I'm better off out of that. This huge caravan of advertising coming along behind, stuff like that. And it's every day's a pantomime. And then there's the races.
After Hercules withdrew from cycling at the end of 1955, Bernard stayed on the continent for 4 more seasons, riding in the orange, blue and red of teams across France, Belgium and Switzerland. 1958 was his strongest year abroad. He won the Grand Prix de Monaco over 96 miles, took victory at Terrasson-le-Villedieu in the Dordogne, and finished second in Roubaix-Cassel-Roubaix. He returned home in 1959, riding for Whitcomb Trading in the Tour of Britain, where he won stage 3 at Whitley Bay and finished 6th overall. He hung up his wheels in 1960 after more than a decade of racing at the highest level.
That only lasted a year, and I sort of, I suppose I rode freelance after, nearly all in France or Belgium. The selection of these local races around near the French border with Belgium. Whoever's running the race, you turn up there, and if you got your licence, you could sign on the line. So that wasn't so bad. I wasn't getting rich, but I thought one of these days I'll get taken up by one of the trade teams, because that made all the difference. Looking back, I think it's because they were backed up by sympathetic doctors. Well, I got married in 1960.
Yeah.
By which time I was 30. I know they've gone a lot longer now, but they race a lot long into their 30s. But then I got chicken pox, and that's no joke. When you what's quite reasonable for a kid, it's like a bad attack of flu if you're a bit older. That knocked me about a bit. That did, I think that more or less put the kibosh on it.
After the interview, Bernard wanted to show me his bike in the garage. I suddenly realised it was the same bike that he'd won the Whitley Bay stage on in the 1959 Tour of Britain. Hidden under towels, resprayed numerous times, was this frame that he'd first purchased in 1958.
Onse it was pronounced.
Yes.
So that's Twise.
I love it.
This started life as a Whitcomb, although I don't think they never ever made any. Somebody in North London used to make them on the gas stove.
So how long have you had that frame, Bernard?
Since at least 1958, I think.
Chapeau, Bernard. One of the giants on whose shoulders the current riders stand on.